Hello. Thought I'd record this video to help illustrate how we connect our work and what we do through our workflow mapping or value stream mapping all the way into the Kanban board. So, where do we start? Well, the first thing that we start with is what we do. Now, this is really what we're getting paid for, but not all the time from an external customer. A lot of our teams are actually working for internal customers or even teams down the line in their processes or in the flows. So, what do we do? The key things to look for here is what's a start and what's a stop. Some clear timeline that we can define. If we can understand when my start is and when my stop is, therefore now I can start to think of something in a work item fashion. Once we identify what we do, we want to get an understanding of the value that that thing is bringing. So one of the tools that we can use is something called fit for purpose. Here's a little graph that's showing a fit for purpose. We take this from the customer point of view. Again, customer either internal or external. And we start to look at what is that thing, what is that value that we're delivering. We put ourselves in their shoes. We display empathy. Give our team a rating. How would we rate ourselves if we were the customer? And more importantly, if you look down there at the bottom, how are we actually measuring this? How do we confirm the value that we're delivering? Or how do we confirm that we're fit for purpose? All right, so we come back with what we do. Now we should have a list of all of these different things. We're going to call them work types or work items. These are things that we have a clear start and a clear stop. Now, a couple things is we want to understand the differences between these, the priorities between these. The next thing I want to show you is something called class of service. These are 4 different criterias in order to help us determine the priority of things. Okay, you will see on there we have things that are expedited. We have things that are fixed date. We have things that are standard. And we have things that are intangible. So, quick reference here, expedited, there's an immediate impact. That impact doesn't go away until it's resolved. The second one, fixed date. There's a period of time it hits that fixed date, immediately impacts and sustains until that's resolved. Okay. The standard is basically over time, the risk gets greater until we resolve it. And intangible is kind of at this point that we don't really know how it is, we just know that eventually it's going to create a risk. You can utilize all of these things to determine the priorities of what we do, your work types or your work items. So, now we've got a list of the things that we do, and we've got some understanding here of what's the customer's view of that, how we're measuring it, and more importantly, we're starting to see the prioritization between these items. This is going to be the foundation for the next thing, which is workflow mapping, or some of us are more familiar with the term value stream mapping. I try not to use the term value stream mapping because our whole goal here in when we're actually mapping out the flow is to gain an understanding. It's not saying whether something's right or something's wrong. We're just really trying to understand how do we do those things that we do. So what do we do? Our work items, our work types. And now we're going to map out the flows. So the simple question is, how do we do what we do? And this is where we map out the flow. Now, Agile's a little bit simpler. Our goal of mapping out this is not to document the flow, it's to gain a common understanding as a group of how our work gets done. We do this, and this leads into how we manage, how we monitor, how we position our teams to align to how that work actually gets done. You can go into things like lean value stream mapping to document out the official processes. You can use it as guides, etc. But for our purpose here, workflow mapping in Agile, we're really doing it so that the collective group coming together has a common understanding of what it takes to get those things done, those work types, those work items, to complete them. So, what do? I'm going to clean the board again. We pick our work type. I would suggest starting with one that you consider a priority. Maybe even better, start with a work type that is something that we do a lot. It takes a lot of our time, or it's important for us. These are typically the ones that we understand the most and the easiest to start when it comes to workflow mapping. Okay? So we look at this in two ways. So first, we start with a level 1, highest level view, and we try to limit that to 5. These pins are not so great at all. Let's try the red. Ooh, red's nice. Can you see red? A little bit. That's all right. I'll make you slides. So we start with level 1, high. 5 to 6 steps, just to get a high-level understanding of how do we go from that start to that stop. Okay? Now, we draw these out, right? It might be something like review initial request, plan out action, implement that action, check and confirm, approve and close. Okay, that's 5 very simple steps. Now, we look at this and we go, okay, what's the value that was produced here, right? Is it still fit for our customer's purpose? So we also look at this for each of this, who are the players involved? Who are the actors involved? Maybe it's other teams. Maybe it's all of our team. Maybe it's different members within our team. Maybe it's a combination of both of those. And ideally, what we want to do is actually bring all those people together. We want to have representation that can give us more details of each of these steps. Okay, from their point of view, from their experience, we can confirm that with data, with our measurements, with our metrics. Okay. Now, when you have all the people together, it's very simple. We go now to level 2, a little bit deeper. Try to target about 10, 15 steps, maximum 20. We want to keep it at this level because we don't want to get into the work instruction. We don't want to go kind of in the prescriptive type of approach, right? We want to identify the value that each person is contributing, that each step is providing. So one of the steps that we want to start digging into is this one that says plan out what we're going to do, plan that activity that we're going to do. So we've already done the review of the ticket, now we're at the planning phase, right? So planning might be that we have a meeting. Yeah, pull everybody together for the meeting, and the outcomes of that meeting would be high-level objectives, right? Then we're going to go and we're going to look through and we're going to maybe create action plans for each of those high-level objectives. So we've got our meeting here. Yeah, we've got our action plans here, right? Then we might do something like confirm the resources that are needed, the people, the time, the cost, the effort involved, so we make sure that we're going to be successful in our plan. And these 3 steps here will encompass this one step of planning. Okay? And you go through that, and this is why the actors are so important. Who is involved in this planning step? That's the people that we want to seek their feedback from. And you keep going. So we've got now this single flow of how all of these steps come together to ultimately deliver that request that our customer has asked us for. Now comes the timing of it. We want to understand what's the whole lead time from the start to the finish. How long does it take us to get what we do done, to do this thing? So we estimate, right? The assumption here is every single one of these items is an action. So these are our active times. And we estimate the active times. We just go through all the steps in our level 2 and estimate the action time. Now, additionally, between these steps, there's potentially wait. We go in and we estimate the wait times. If we add up all of the active times and all of the wait times, this gives us what we call the total cycle time, or the lead time. Okay? All of the action time and all of the wait time added together. And that's the real experience from the customer's point of view of how long it takes for my request to get delivered. If we look at this, the total cycle time, when you add that together, does that feel right? So for whatever activity or whatever request that we're saying, if we come up with something that takes 6.5 weeks, right? Does 6.5 weeks feel like the right amount of time? Or if it's something like resolution of a Sev 1 and we come up with 4.5 hours, does that feel like the right time? So that's a quick way to kind of sanity check or just quickly check your estimates. Am I really taking 10 minutes for this? And we can start to make corrections on our wait time and our activity time based on our gut feelings. So that's how we can calculate the whole lead time here. Now, process efficiency. We're going to look and we're going to say, how efficient is this process? Now, efficiency is a very generic thing. It's just simply taken on the fact that it says activity time is good, wait time is bad. So the more wait time in a process or an activity, the less efficient it is. So the way that we calculate that is we take our activity time divided by our total cycle time. Multiply that by 100 to give us our percentage, and that then equals our process or activity efficiency percentage. Most of our processes run under 20% efficiency, which means about 80% of the time is wait time. Okay? Don't get too excited either way on this. If you have something that's 90% efficient, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. We can do really, really crappy things efficiently, right? So the whole goal, again, with this workflow mapping is to build a common understanding as a group. At this point now, we've got a very simple, very quick, but more importantly, well understood flow of how our work gets done. And you can repeat this workflow mapping for all the different work types that you're doing. You can generalize those work types, generalize your estimations to make it simpler and only create less, or create less workflow maps. It's really up to you, okay? But the whole goal here is now the team has a better understanding of how that work gets done. Now, where does Kanban fit into all of this? Well, the simple thing is if we look at the different steps that this process or this activity goes through, this can indicate to us what would be the columns on our Kanban board. What would be those work in progress on our Kanban board? So let me pause for a minute for those that aren't so familiar with Kanban. This is a pretty simple thing, all right? Picture the old days. You had a desk. Okay? And on the desk you had two containers. You had an inbox and you had an outbox, right? And typically we always would see that the inboxes were piled super high. We just have so much to do, okay? Kanban's that exact same way. So what's in your inbox is considered what we call backlog, okay? Not a bad thing. Backlog is not a bad thing. It just means work that we need to do. And then in the middle is what's on our desk, right? That's our work in progress, or we abbreviate this as WIP. And at the end here is that outbox. Kanban, we call it done. Okay? That's the simplest form. What do we need to do? What are we currently doing? And what have we done? So back to workflow map. We have all these different stages that piece of work goes through. So we can have different things which are called work states. So we might have something that says review is the first thing that we do. Then we go to plan, but we could keep going on. And as it moves through those phases, then it gets done. And this is how we can actually visually see how our work flows across our Kanban board. Our goal as teams is to improve our flow, which means to get more items, more work types across our Kanban board into our done column. It's not about what we're busy doing, our utilization. It's more focused on our flow. What are we actually finishing? That's the slight shift that we're trying to take with our teams. It's not about being busy. It's about getting things done and getting things done that are valuable. We can also quickly see where there's bottlenecks, where there's constraints, where the work is piled up. If we get into more advanced techniques on Kanban, we can put things in like work in progress limits to kind of define how many things, how many work types, how many work items can be in each column. We can plan how many people we want to position on each. We could even define what's the limit per person. There's countless ways that you can actually configure your Kanban board. And the ultimate thing is you want to make it work for you. We go from what do we do? Have a deep understanding of what we do. Have an understanding of what the value is. Is it aligned to our customers' needs? We look at the priorities of that. And then from there, once we know what we do, we use workflow mapping, value stream mapping, to understand even more detail of how we do what we do. And this is bringing the people together that are actually doing that, having them share their opinion, having them provide that estimation and confirming that with the data that we have in our metrics and our measurements. Then we take those understandings of our workflow and we look at how do we visualize our work better, with our focus being on improving flow, getting things done. We utilize the Kanban methodology and the Kanban boards to actually visualize what our teams are doing in a better way. Just remember, the goal here is delivering value quickly, right? Delivering more value more often. And that starts with focusing on improving the flow and then tuning the utilization secondary. So good luck, have fun, see you guys.